Hey y'all, how's it going? I hope you're having a good week so far. I wanted to do a full review of these Ecoline watercolor liquid watercolor. I did do an art supply haul, so be sure and check that out. I'll have that linked, where I do some swatches of these, but I want to use them in a painting with other things that I would use in a painting and see how they do. Alright, so we're going to do a painting on this fluid cold press watercolor paper. It is 140 pound paper, 12 by 16. This is kind of like my low commitment watercolor paper. I have a block of Arch paper, but it's expensive. So I don't want to use it this time. Alright y'all, I'm just gonna start this like I've been starting most of my watercolor paintings, with watercolor pencil. I'm using a couple of different brands here. I don't really find that much difference between different brands of watercolor pencil. I believe this is a Faber-Castell in this peach color. I'll also be using some Prismacolors and maybe, I don't know, Daler-Rowney or something. Like I said, there's not much difference across brands. They all tend to perform the same, at least with the brands that I've tried. But yeah, I wanted to use these Ecoline liquid watercolors how I would use a normal watercolor and see how they performed. I would say overall they did well, but you'll see that later when I start integrating them into the painting. I will say that I hate how this painting turned out, like a lot. I had a couple of weeks here where I was making paintings that I really didn't like, that I just felt like weren't working. They felt really flat and like, I don't know, predictable, I guess. And this is one of those paintings, but that's something that I'm coming to accept as part of being an artist that's working regularly. I mean, even if you aren't working regularly, if you're an artist, you're gonna make bad stuff sometimes, and it can be hard to be gentle with yourself when those situations come up. Of course, when I made this and it came out really poorly, I was really frustrated and annoyed, and I felt like a failure. But the important thing is that I went back into my studio the next day. And that's kind of what you have to do. You have to let yourself feel the feelings of negativity, but then keep on anyway, rather than letting those feelings force you into giving up. Anyway, after doing the different colors and brands of colored watercolor pencil, I went over with a thin wash of just water and smeared some of the pigment around, and then now I'm retracing some of the shapes with the same watercolor pencils that I did the initial drawing with. I'm starting to think that, and I mentioned at the start of this video, that this fluid paper is kind of my low risk watercolor paper because it's not as expensive. It's large, so I feel like I have more space to explore, but I've noticed painting on the Arch paper that I'm so much more careful and considered with everything that I do, and that usually that gives me better paintings. So like maybe I'm just being too careless while working on this low budget paper. I don't really know what the deal is. Also, I kind of shot myself in the foot trying to use, so that purple is going to be an Ecoline watercolor, and that fuchsia is one as well. I shot myself in the foot trying to use all of the different colors in the same painting because they're all the same saturation. So there ends up not being a lot of contrast and rhythm in the distribution of colors because they all register to the eye as being the same saturation. Like, it just ends up being flat. And I don't like to make those kinds of paintings. So I don't know. I just am watching this footage back as I'm recording this audio, and I'm like, why are you doing that? What made you decide to make that move? There were so many other things you could have done to make this painting good. But I don't know. It was bad from the start. All the shapes are gross. That weird bent knee that turns into a foot in the upper right hand corner. I don't really understand that. Like I've talked about before, how I like to do shapes that are sort of derivative of letters or language. And those two shapes on the right are very obviously a B and an E. So it's lost all nuance. Yeah. So far the only pigment I've applied, the only liquid pigment I've applied is the Ecoline watercolor. I mean, these are okay. Are they great? Are they amazing? No. I think they'll be useful maybe when I airbrush. That's probably gonna be what I end up using them for. I don't know, you can really easily lay down a flat layer of color without much variation in the texture if you want to, or you can add big drops of water and make it bloom and do cool things. I would say that if you're a beginner who wants to try watercolor but is kind of intimidated by it, these Ecoline watercolors are good for that, because you don't have to worry as much about putting down the watercolor on the paper too dry, not mixing enough water with the pan watercolor, or something from the tube, because this is already liquid. I mean, it's really concentrated and really pigmented, but you have the choice to dilute it or just work straight from the bottle. So it's a little bit more accessible in that way. This brown here is the Daler-Rowney watercolor ink that I showed you guys in my previous art supply haul. I bought this at the same time that I did the Ecoline watercolors. Again, not amazing, but I'll use it. No art supply goes to waste in my studio, but yeah, again, not a great color choice for this painting. Why did I choose brown with the pink and the yellow? It's going in a weird direction. That violet color with the fuchsia and the yellow are giving me 1980s color palette, and then I'm trying to do this mossy green and dirt brown with those colors, and not really connecting them in any way, just acting like it would work. So the palette's all messed up for this. This is a Tombow marker, by the way, this green that I'm laying down. I thought it would be good to add some marker texture, or some contrasting texture to all of the watercolor that has taken over the painting. And I mean, I think contrasting textures is always good in a drawing or painting, but these colors just don't work together. yeah, so I could have easily just not shown you guys this video and hidden my shame. But I think it's important to share failure as much as you do success, especially online. I know that, like, obviously it's an ugly painting and I'm producing a video that goes on a video channel that, like, is sort of, its entire locus is aesthetics and, like, creating an ideal aesthetic and something that's, like, aspirational that maybe you could, by watching this video, want to participate in some kind of aesthetic. You know what I'm saying? I'm failing at that, too. Like, by showing you a bad painting, I'm producing also a bad aesthetic video product. So it's not even pleasurable to watch, necessarily. So what's the value in it? Well, I think there's value in showing failure because as an artist, I keep myself from doing so many things because I'm scared of failing. And, you know, I'm showing, I don't want this to sound like bragging at all, because it's not. I just want to sort of illustrate to you the direction of my career. I'm showing my work and having solo shows pretty regularly. I'm getting grants regularly. Some would consider me a successful artist, you know, by my own ways of measuring success. I'm not successful, but that's because I'm my worst critic. But all that is to say that even people that you perceive as successful can mess up and make bad work and just generally do a bad job. Like, that's possible at all points in your life. There's not a point where you're gonna learn all the tricks and everything you make is gonna be good all the time. I mean, it's the same with being in relationships with other people, like friendships or romantic relationships, or, you know, working at a job. Like, there's always something to be learned, and there are always mistakes to be made. So I think it's important for me to show those mistakes, so that maybe whoever is watching this could be a little bit less scared to do something. Whether it's sit down and, like, draw while they're watching TV, or try a new material. Like, these are all things we should be doing because they make you more fulfilled as a person, I find, than just sort of staying in the same routine all the time. And I think that's kind of part of what made this painting so bad, is that I've gotten in a rhythm of making paintings where they're all started the same, colored in the same, using the same materials. I mean, the Ecoline watercolors are new, but I've been working with watercolor for a while now. I've been working in similar palettes, similar shapes, so, like, everything kind of ends up looking the same, and some of them look better than others. But I think I learned from making this painting and this video that I need to experiment a little bit more with my imagery. Thanks for listening to my rant, by the way. This blue here is really thinned out acrylic paint. It's a golden acrylic, I believe phthalo blue or something like that. The other blue shape I painted with gouache, acrylic gouache by Holbein. Let's see. The brown, all of the lines were drawn in there with my Lamy Safari. I believe I have some brown Noodler's ink in there. Now I'm outlining this green shape with a Rotring Tiki graphic pen in a 0.8 size. It's a very thick pen. Love to draw with this. And I outlined the purple shape with my Pentel pocket brush pen. That black shape, the B, I kept reworking. I painted it 50 different times. I did it the same with the E shape. I couldn't find colors that I felt worked for those. The B I colored in finally in black with the Faber-Castell like big brush pen, and now I'm going back in with the chalk marker that I drew the outline for the blue shape in, and adding some polka dots. At this point, I'm just like trying to figure out a way to save this painting, and so I'm like, maybe if I add patterns to everything, it'll look better. Guess what? It didn't. It just made it more chaotic and like discordant. And I'm adding this kind of like psychedelic, almost paisley looking pattern to this purple shape here with a Staedtler fine liner. Probably like a 0.3 fine liner. So yeah, I hope you guys can gain something from watching this video. I understand that it was like supposed to be an eco line review, and here I am like getting into the nitty-gritty of like failure and making bad work, but now is as good a time as ever to talk about that, I suppose. If I was going to give the eco lines a rating, I would say out of 5 stars, 3.5. There's not anything wrong with them, but they're not amazing. And like, they don't make me excited to paint with them. I'm just like, okay, I have extra trash to add to my paintings now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they just don't get my gears turning. I don't have like new ideas exploding out of my brain and new paintings I want to make with these. They're just more of the same. Not that much different than just mixing a thin watercolor wash, or, you know, it just whatever. But like I said, great for beginners. They're inexpensive. I got these half off of MSRP, so they were like $2.50, but MSRP is like $5, and you get quite a lot for $5. So if you want to try watercolor, have never painted with it before, don't want to invest a lot of money, I would say buy them. But if you are a seasoned watercolor painter, using like top of the line, like Daniel Smith watercolors, are these worth it? No. Not really, unless you have certain colors that you don't want to waste by mixing your expensive watercolor paints with. There's not really any granulation in these at all. They're pretty smooth pigment distribution. You know, that's how I feel about them. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for listening to me rant about, you know, failure and bad paintings. Be sure and check out my art supply haul where I bought these Ecoline watercolors. And I will see you guys next week. Thank you so much for watching again. I love you. Bye.